and we give it its own intonation unit. And when we do this, we use a fall rise. So I want to make sure that you know I'm talking about John. So if I say John's a teacher, you might say, who? Oh yeah, okay. If I say John is a teacher, then I give it its own IP. If I do that, then it's the second IP. John is a teacher, and then I make it clear that for the moment this is my focus of attention. So we can say John's a teacher, John's a teacher, no problem. Fall on teacher. John is a teacher. So if I'm introducing a passage, I'm going to say a few words about John, and I can begin, I can say, John's a teacher, he works in London, he's a friend of mine actually, and so on and so forth. No, but if I say it like that, it's less clear that I'm talking about this person, John. So to make it clearer and to give the reader a break, you use more IPs. You say, John is a teacher, he works in London. In fact, he's a friend of mine and I've known him for years. And it sounds much better, doesn't it? We've given John his own IP. So this is particularly the case when the subject is long, but not only when the subject is long. So in the first case, the subject is short, but I've put a full rise on wife. No? My wife woke up with a headache.
My wife woke up with a headache.
Yeah, you say it, Christina.
My wife woke up with a headache.
There you go, perfect. Right, my wife woke up with a headache.
My wife woke up with a headache.
Yeah, good, that's it.
And what's the difference in meaning between my wife and my wife woke up with a headache?
None. It's just what I've said. It's to highlight the subject.
But there's no difference.
There's no difference. No,
Yeah.
it just makes
say
it
your
clearer.
wife woke up with a
Makes it
headache.
clearer.
Why should I focus on wife
It makes it clearer for the listener.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it. For clear purposes.
Gives the listener a break. Who are we talking about? Okay, got that clear. Huh? My wife woke up with a headache. You say.
My
wife.
wife woke up with a headache.
Right, you say it.
My wife woke up with a headache.
Okay, perfect. And then, if you've got a long subject, then you're definitely more likely to give it its own intonational unit. No? Say, the only sensible thing to do was to make our way back to the car. No? That's obviously a good idea there, no? Because otherwise, if you make it one intonation unit, the only sensible thing to do is to make our way back to the car. A mouthful. No? Too long. So the only sensible thing to do, you say.
The only sensible thing to do
Was to make our way back to the car.
was to make our way back to the car.
Right, notice was to, low tone, unstressed, was to make our way back to the car, was to make our way back to the car, was to. Don't you say it, Christina?
The only sensible thing to do was to make our way back to the car.
Right. Okay, and then
Was to make our way back to the car.
defining versus non-defining relative clauses, the point that Tim made, he said, I'm going to make a deliberate mistake.
Ah.
He said, my wife, who's in London, that means you have other wives, no? Have a harem. So, a typical example I use for my students in Barcelona is there's a difference between my wife, who's in New York, phoned me last night. That's different to my wife, who is in New York, phoned me last night. The second one is more expected. No? You are expected to have one wife. And the non-defining relative clause adds information. In actual fact, what Tim didn't say is that normally in speech you don't use non-defining relative clauses. You wouldn't normally say, my wife, who is in New York, phoned me last night. You'd say, oh, by the way, you remember my wife? Yeah, she's in New York. She phoned me last night. That's the way you speak. Right? You don't use this tidy, non-defining relative clause in speech. It's a way of tidying up a sentence in written language. No, you put two messages into the same sentence. No? And in the written form, the non-defining relative clauses are separated by commas. So, you know, if you say, my wife, who is in New York, no, you have wife, who is in New York, all rise on York, phoned me last night, right? That would mean you have several, you would have one wife, no? Commas. You are adding something about your wife. This is an inserted piece of information. Yeah? But if you say, my wife who's in New York, that means you have another wife somewhere else. No? My wife who's in New York, that one. In Spanish, you can disambiguate by using aquel and aquella. ¿No? Aquellas personas que desean solo aquellas, but las personas como que desean, the people we've been talking about, and moreover. So here you have the example, the soldiers who had been demobbed, that's demobilized. When you leave the army, you are demobilized. You are no longer.
Not like giving the mob or anything like that.
No. Well, it's related, of course.
I see.
That word. Yeah, mob comes from Latin mobile burgos. A mob is a crowd of people, noisy. It comes from the Latin mobile burgos, which means moving mass of people. The burgos in Latin was
People.
el vulgo.
Volgo.
I thought we always use mob with the idea of criminal gangs, not with the idea of people in general.
Yeah, a mob is, you know, a derogatory way of talking about a crowd of people. Don't go near that mob. They're dangerous.
Soldier would be
To
mob.
mob.
Well, okay.
Modern English, mobbing. Mobbing, intimidating.
Yeah.
It's used in
Yeah, we
Spanish
use
now,
it in
mobbing.
Italian as well, the same word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get mobbing, mobiliario, and you know, when people are forced out of their homes in Spain, yeah, they call it mobbing, mobiliario, and the second one is not, it's inclusive. So it's quite important, this distinction, and we would put commas around the second one, no?
Yeah.
And that has an influence on the use of the relatives that you use in English, remember, no? In non-defining clauses, you can only use who, whom, and which. You cannot use that. Yeah. So the soldiers, whom, in the first case, you could say the soldiers who or the soldiers that. It's non-defining. Soldiers that have been demobbed, only those. Yeah. And in the second case, if you're talking about things, you can only use which. You can't use that. No? The chair that I'm sitting on, the chair that I'm sitting on, or the chair which I'm sitting on, is broken. Is that defining or non-defining? The chair which I'm sitting on is broken. 2 IPs. The chair which I'm sitting on, the chair that I'm sitting on is broken. Defining, right, this chair, defining this chair.
Yeah.
But the chair, there's only one chair in the room, perhaps. No? Only one chair in the room. The chair, comma, which, you cannot use that, which I'm sitting on. And you mean, by the way, this chair, which is here, I'm sitting on it, is broken. You're saying the message is the chair's broken. And the incidental information is I'm sitting on it, and that's subordinate. No? The chair's broken. That's the information. And you bracket the subordinate information between commas. You bracket that off. No? It's a tidy way of putting 2 concepts together. Yeah.
One thing about the fall rise, I mean, does it have to be fall rise in there, in those 3 last sentences? Because I would say the only sensible thing to do, I wouldn't say to do.
No.
Does it have to be fall rise?
Oh, the only sensible thing to do, yeah, if it's in that boundary there, it's a full rise.
It's a fall rise. It can be,
Yeah, you could use a rise.
yeah, I was thinking
But,
fall rise. And same thing on the last 2.
Yeah. In these cases, you can use rises as well.
Rise it and possible.
The soldiers who'd been demobbed, rises. Yeah. But I'm giving you the
The full
full
rise
rise
is better?
because it's more usual.
Is it?
Right.
thing to do is.
Okay. So move on to page 14. Question versus exclamations. Or do you want to practice those sentences first? Yeah, I think we better read the soldiers first.
Okay.
So you read the first one. The soldiers who've been demobbed were retrained. The soldiers, bottom of page 13.
The second one. The soldiers who had been demobbed were retained.
That's the second one, right? Okay, and now read the first
The
one.
first one. The soldiers who had been demobbed were retained.
That's it, yeah. Two different tunes, right? 2 IPs in the first one, 3 IPs in the second, yeah? And therefore, 3 IPs, 3 nuclei. Yeah? An IP contains a nucleus, a stress which is more important than the others. IP, intonational phrase, yeah? Okay, so next page. Questions versus exclamations, obviously there's a difference. Question, you're not sure. Aren't their children good? I thought they were very good. I thought they were good children. Aren't their children good? Or, you're impressed. Fall. Aren't their children good? Aren't their children good? Right? Yeah. Vayan niños más educados. ¿Qué tienen? ¿Qué niños más educados? Aren't the children good? Wasn't the film good? Wasn't the film good? Yes, very good.
This is
question.
easier, wasn't the film good?
But question,
Our children.
oh, you don't seem to have liked that film. Wasn't the film good? I thought it was.
Good.
So question, you do it, Maria. Aren't their children good? Question.
Aren't children good?
Aren't their
Are their
children
children good?
good? Good.
Okay. Are the children good? The second
No,
one is
right, good.
Aren't the
Good.
children good?
Yeah.
Aren't the children good? And the second one is aren't the children good?
Aren't their children good?
Aren't the
Yeah.
children good?
It's very good, aren't they? Yeah. Well behaved. Aren't their children good? Wasn't the film good? Wasn't the class good? Exciting. Okay, that's obvious, no? And question versus statements. Statements, her uncle's died. Her uncle's died. My cat's died. Question. Her uncle's died? Her uncle's died? Did you say?
Okay. Her uncles died.
Her uncle's died? Can't
Her
believe
uncles
it.
died.
Really?
Her uncles died.
Yeah,
Her uncles died. Her uncles died.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
We don't form questions quite so much in that way in English as in some other languages. No? It's quite normal in many languages to take the statements and just inflect your voice. We sometimes do it in English, but you know, in special cases like this where you're not quite sure, you're really eliciting repetition, perhaps. No? Our uncle's died.
Uncles died.
John's not here. Oh, how strange! How strange. John's not here. Right.
So you see, that is why we always go for that question, to make sure that we are using the right intonation with foreigners.
Probably in response.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's this one. I
Back up.
mean, your uncle's died.
Mm.
I would go for, isn't he?
No, in this case, you're
Is it
eliciting
true?
repetition.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm asking.
Uncle's died.
Her uncles died.
I think I would always attach to that at
I'm
the
surprised
time.
to hear that. Hmm?
It means really.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go for a really.
Her
The
uncles
bus is
died.
coming. I can't believe it. It normally takes another 50 minutes for the bus to come. You know, you're standing at the bus stop. You're normally there half of the day. So the bus is coming. Yeah. The class is over. Well, can't believe it. The teacher stopped talking. What? What's going on? Is he drunk or something? Okay. So, any, absolutely any versus any chosen at random. Compare. She's not in the habit of talking to anybody. That means
She's not.
nobody. Right? She's not in the habit of talking to anybody. But if you use a full rise, oh, she spoke to you. She's not in the habit of talking to anybody. I'm impressed. She must be special. She's not in the habit of talking to anybody. She must think you're somebody important. Yeah? Julio Iglesias isn't going to sing anywhere, only in good theatres. Yeah? Julio Iglesias won't sing anywhere. That means only in special places. Yeah? I don't teach just any students, only good students, like you. I don't teach just any students. Any students, full rise. Any students. I don't teach just any students. I only teach more advanced ones. See if you can read those, Francisco. She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
Right. And the other one is...
she's not in the habit of...
No. Same again. She's not in the habit of talking to...
She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
To anybody.
To anybody.
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 There you're saying, wow. Vaya. ¿Hablado contigo? Qué suerte, ¿no? ¿Llevas perfume o qué pasa hoy? ¿No? Right? She's not in the habit of talking to anybody, you say.
She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
Right. Only special people, only people she likes. Yeah? She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
No, that was the negative, no, to anybody. I want the full rise.
Oh, okay, sorry. She's not in the habit of talking to anybody.
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 Anybody. Anybody. Anybody.
Anybody.
Fall on any, rise on body.
She's not in
Anybody.
the habit of talking to
Anybody.
anybody.
Yeah, that's it. You've got it. Anybody. She won't stay in just any hotel. Any hotel. Where's the fall?
Just in special ones.
Yeah. Fall on any. Where's the rise? I can write it like this, my notation, fall rise. Or, to make it more explicit, I can put the fall where it falls and I can put the rise where it rises. I can do that. Any hotel. She won't stay in just any hotel, or sometimes we say any old hotel. It doesn't mean anything, just an extra element. She won't stay in just any old hotel. You know what she's like, a bit snobbish, you know. Yeah. She's a bit snobbish.
She won't go out with any guy.
Yeah, she won't, exactly. She won't go out with just
Any ordinary guy.
Any ordinary
Guy.
guy. That's it. She only goes out with, rich men or yeah, men with big cars. She won't buy just any old flat. She wants 200 square meters. She won't buy just any old flat.
She won't buy just any old flat.
Any old flat.
Any old flat.
Flat.
Any old flat.
Yeah, she won't buy just any old flat.
Any old flat.
She wants 200 square meters. Right?
Yeah, nothing short.
She won't buy just any old flat.
She won't buy just any old flat.
That's it. You got it. Any old flat. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to just any old class. Yeah? I'm not going to just any old class. I want somebody trained in the subject. Right? I want to study history, but I'm not going to just any old class. I'm telling you now. Right? You say it. I'm not going to just any old class.
I'm just going to any old class.
Yeah. Just any old class. Yeah.
Just any old class.
Right, or let's say, I'm not going to just any old bar, I want to go to somewhere chic, somewhere nice, with a nice atmosphere. I'm not going to just any old bar.
I'm not going to just any old bar.
Perfect. I'm not going to just any old bar. You say it, Steph.
I'm not going just
Well, I'm not going to just,
I'm not going to just
try and keep it level. I'm not going to just any old bar.
I'm
not going to just any old bar.
Yeah, the thing is not to inflect your voice until you get to that nucleus.
But I think we tend to
Not
inflect just.
going
We inflect just. We go all the way up to just and then we fall.
after just you.
Yeah,
No,
but
any
we
old bar.
go, it's an increasing.
I'm not going just to any old bar.
But just sounds higher than.
I'm not
I'm going to